Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is Mahvish Akhtar with another episode of FemmeEdition. Today we're talking about news, world news, and how it relates to Pakistan. And right now we know how exactly hi to those of you just joined in. And today, right now, we know exactly how it relates to Pakistan. But we will go a little bit deeper into the situation and explain things. Try to explain things in more depth than the media is right now, and maybe talk about why the media is not इतनी depth में नहीं जा रहा जितने जाना चाहिए. While people catch on and join us, let me introduce myself because I am sure कि ये question आप लोगों के ज़हन में इस वक्त आएगा कि what gives you the authority to talk to us about this and the news and what's happening around the world. Well, I've been a journalist for 25, up to 25 से ज़्यादा ही हो गए होंगे, right? I've been saying that for years, at least 25 years. I've actually been a political reporter for our area, for South and Central Asia, for a publication that was reporting in the U.S. and parts of Europe. And now I run my own business, and we do some reporting, and I do freelance work now. So this is something that I, first of all, am personally interested in because obviously we should all be interested in knowing कि हमारे आसपास क्या हो रहा है, right? क्योंकि अब तक तो ये था कि हमें पता होना चाहिए because we are in some way indirectly involved. ठीक है ना? हम as a Muslim ummah or as just people sitting in this geographically in this area, हमें पता होना चाहिए, right? We're right in the middle of it. But though, as we all know, we're mediating. I mean, gosh, we're the mediator. I mean, we knew we were going to be the mediators. Up to it was kind of ठीक है, Pakistan's mediating Turkey and Pakistan. Now Friday को mediations, the talks will start. But पहले तक the situation was a little bit different. Up the situation was volatile. Not that पहले it wasn't volatile, but the American government and Israel, because this is all because of Israel, the American government keeps making it worse and worse. So let's start from the beginning. So of course we know that U.S. and Israel attacked Iran, and we know why they say they attacked Iran. It was because of the nuclear program that they say that they were moving towards and or already had one or planning on making a nuclear weapon, which Iran denied but didn't even need to deny. We all know Iran didn't need to even deny it because they were in the middle of talks, a nuclear deal agreement where they said they were not going to, and they had never planned on it. क्यों भला? Because पहले भी तो एक डील हो रही थी ना, उससे पहले भी एक डील हो रही थी. तो कितने 3 दफ़ा ये हो चुका है कि डील के बीच में या तो डील को ख़त्म करके 2-4 इल्ज़ाम लगा के और बात ख़त्म हो गई. पिछली दफ़ा Israel attacked, and the whole thing was कि बस ये they're not making a deal, they don't want a deal, they don't this and that. It's pretty much the same thing while the deal was being talked about. And they keep saying, Iranians keep saying, we're doing this for our own research, for the betterment of our people. इसका nuclear weapon से कोई ताल्लुक नहीं है. But either the scientists that go to research in Iran, or either they're not qualified to make, this assessment, or they just don't want to look in the same way or, come back and talk about it or tell the truth. Anyways, so this is how we come to today, to this war. And what's been happening? Trump and Israel, both the American government and Israel, I'm just going to say Trump because there's no government anymore. It's just one person because एक जंग को अमेरिका में अप्रूव करने के लिए पूरी कांग्रेस जो वहाँ पे एक वो है ब्रांच है कांग्रेस की उसका अप्रूवल चाहिए होता है but he just bypassed everyone and then hired a few people who would just listen to him. Literally, he just did that. He named them proper जो departments हैं उनका, but department में जो लोग हैं they're disagreeing with their department heads. लेकिन वो उनकी कोई नहीं सुन रहा. जो department heads हैं वो Trump की मर्जी के लोग हैं and that's it. So basically Trump is running the show. So Israel basically was inching and wanting this war for decades. Why is that? We'll come to that too. And maybe while we talk about this, it will get more and more clear why Israel wanted this war so badly. Now, as we know, अब हमारे ऊपर ये clear है कि बाकी जो लोग हैं, बाकी not लोग, but बाकी जो Middle Eastern Gulf की countries हैं, they're pretty much allied with the U.S. government and Israel. You know, their military bases were already there. And Iran had been the only issue in the region. Palestine wala issue to chal hi raha tha, usme they had support from the United States and basically from all of the European countries in the way that they were quiet. Statements dena or keh dena, that's not really something that changes anything, right? अभी तक तो यही हो रहा है ना कि statements हैं, but nobody's really doing anything. That's why वो गज़ा को उन्होंने बिल्कुल फ्लैटन कर दिया है कि कोई बोल नहीं रहा. अब वो फिर वेस्ट बैंक में भी ये शुरू हो गया, लेबनान में भी they're pushing people out, not just bombing, but pushing people out and making their own settlements. ये खबरें, these are the news pieces that I'm talking about जो हम तक नहीं पहुंचती हैं कि वो सिर्फ लेबनान में there's not just bombing going on there. वो तो हो ही रही है, which is horrible. लेकिन research a little bit more. कि वहाँ से भी they're pushing people out of there. The Israelis, the army, the IDF, IOF, they're pushing people out and they're making their own settlements. So वही चीज़ जो उन्होंने पैलेस्टाइन में की है और अभी भी कर रहे हैं, वेस्ट में कर रहे हैं और गज़ा में तो अलग ही बिल्कुल एक तमाशा है. They're doing that in Israel as well. And I don't know कि हम में से कितने पाकिस्तानियों को इस चीज़ का पता है क्योंकि हम पाकिस्तानियों को तो इसराइल को वहाँ के ज़ायनिस्ट को कन्विंस करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. They don't even come in this direction because हमसे तो वो कोई बात ही नहीं कर सकते. ज़ाहिर है we are already convinced that all of this is wrong. So when they go to the Western news media, they can actually convince them of the greater Israel, the whole greater Israel mantra, जिसमें Syria, Lebanon, ये सब countries आ जाती हैं. So it's not just about Palestine. They want most of the Middle East. और अमेरिका की मदद से they are able to do that. Now, अब आगे जाते जाएंगे तो आपको पता चलेगा कि why is Iran such a problem for them? ईरान ने अभी तक सिर्फ इसराइल को जिस तरह गल्फ कंट्रीज ने एक्सेप्ट किया था उसके हिसाब से दूर रखा होता है. Haven't messed with them. Strong messages दिए हुए थे और अपने आप से दूर रखा होता है कि don't mess with us and what you're doing is wrong. और जब skirmishes होती थी तो they would give a strong message in return. Right? And that is the right of any nation, any country, any sovereign nation to do so. Now, what happened in the beginning of the war, and that's continued to happen until the ceasefire, कि Trump and Netanyahu दोनों का ये ख्याल था कि जो वेनेजुएला में हुआ, and I'm sure all of you know कि वेनेजुएला में क्या हुआ. They went in, they had an operation. Maduro, their leader, they grabbed him and his wife and they brought him to America. उसको वहां पे भी charge नहीं किया उसकी अपनी country में. They brought him to America and he's somehow in American jails and यहाँ पे उसका जो भी होना है अब America में होना है not यहाँ. Anyways, that worked out in Trump's favor in one way or the other. So they thought, same thing with Iran. We have sanctioned them for decades. They've been under so many restrictions. Same thing's going to happen. And who did they have? They had somebody sitting on the side ready to take over because this is Islamic revolution that came in after the Shah's revolution ended. I mean, the Shah's control ended and they all ran to Europe and the US, right? So the Pahlavi family was ready to take over. And they thought the same thing was going to happen. The exact same thing was going to happen. कि यहाँ पर they're going to start bombing, kill the older Khomeini and his family and most of his family. And they thought the people were going to come out on the streets and rejoice maybe and any kind of rioting, any kind of जैसे अमेरिकन करते हैं कि थोड़ी बहुत भी rioting होगी, थोड़ी बहुत भी लोग हंगामा शोर करेंगे, किसी भी किस्म का. They can portray that as, look, the people wanted this, the people wanted freedom, the people wanted whatever it may be. And they can use that propaganda, not just for the outside world, but even for the Iranian people. And put जो outside factors हैं, उनको, you can put them back as their puppets. Because पहले भी क्या हुआ था कि उनका downfall क्यों आया था? उनका downfall इससे आता है कि उन्होंने सबसे बड़ी वजह क्या थी? There were a lot of little reasons. We're not going to go back and evaluate all of it. One of the reasons was कि उन्होंने जो main religion था वो change कर दिया था from Islam to Zoroastrianism. वो चीज बहुत bother की थी लोगों को and that really kind of helped in the revolution. Now this is not about whether I support it or I don't support it. This is not what this is about and I can tell you what I support. I'm not afraid to do that, but the point here, what I'm trying to make is that there was a reason that worked. So even right now, that is why the US is ready to support the Shahs and the Pahlavi. They're away from Islam. And that is what's scaring them about right now, about the Khomeinis and that whole situation. So they had them ready. But the problem that happened here, for whatever reason, जो मसला यहाँ पे हुआ कि जब the older supreme leader Khomeini, Ali Khomeini, उसकी death हुई and the new leader wasn't decided at that time, nobody came out. Nobody rioted. Nobody asked for a regime change. Nobody in Iran complained. So for that 7 days period, how many days there were, I think it was a week, they couldn't say, the media, especially all over the world stage, they couldn't say, look, they want this too. How could they prove to the world कि देखो इनको भी यही चाहिए? देखो, they're out on the streets. They supported whatever decision the government was going to make at that time. It could have been just because they were in the middle of a war and they wanted to show solidarity and they trusted their government enough to make good decisions during war or whatever it was. So that game completely failed that they played in Venezuela. And they showed the strength that they weren't expecting. The US and Israel was not expecting from a country that has been sanctioned, that has been completely, in their opinion, broken down. Their spirits are broken down, in their opinion. So what happened then? They couldn't play that game. And then they chose the new guy, And the new guy, they keep saying, oh, but he might be less radical, he might be less extreme. Well, you killed his father, his, I don't know, wife, family, kids, brother. How is he going to be less extreme and less hard line or whatever you want him to be? Doubtful. Extremely doubtful. We're going to get to the part where how it relates to us, because this is what's happening right now. So what started happening after that was, okay, Iran went on the offensive, and of course they chose his son, and like I said, he was no mercy. Right? And the thing that happened that shook everyone, which was unexpected, is not just that they went after military bases, and that was the right move for them. And then they attacked Israel, and Israel made, this is very interesting, they actually attacked, they were able to, the Iron Dome, जिसका इतना हमने सुना हुआ है, I mean, I'm sure आप लोगों ने भी सुना हुआ है, world's best defense system, इसको तो कोई, like it's some kind of magic thing कि ये पता नहीं कहाँ मार्स से बन के आया कि कोई इसको छेड़ नहीं सकता. So they penetrated that, and then they penetrated उसका जो second वो है कि अगर आप उससे निकल के आ जाएं, उसमें से भी निकल जाएं. But there's another thing that's called David's sling. They actually even got through that. Or up to they've attacked their other military hubs and some other things. And they've destroyed a lot of things that would be unheard of, would be impossible for other people to. And what is even more interesting is that they're making these drones and these missiles and these things from basically scraps. Basically things like, old radios and, the missiles and other things that have been thrown their way, and like washing machines and things put together. So what's happened to them is that they've been sanctioned for so long. They haven't been getting things in. I mean, they had trade with Russia and China and some with Pakistan, but through different routes, kind of like smuggling and whatnot. And by the way, many times when news, I mean, we fought with them also, but I mean, that happened. It was a skirmish, and then it went away. It's like it never happened. It was interesting, even though the U.S. warned us about it and said, okay, we should probably not do that. This is before the war, but we ignored it pretty much. Having a nuclear weapon really does help in getting away with things. If we had some kind of हमारे अंदर इस तरह की हिम्मत होती कि we have nuclear weapons, and Iran doesn't have any nuclear weapons, and they've been sanctioned, and they're still showing more guts than we ever could in front of the U.S. and Israel. But now, I mean, we are part of the peace process, and that's good. That's good, because Iran would listen to us. We have been good friends to Iran, somewhat, and Pakistan knows that we are in a position where we can talk to Iran, and of course, it's a good opportunity for Pakistan to get some favors out of the U.S. if we do this for them, because there's nobody else. Saudi Middle Eastern countries, and they're out. Iran will not talk to any of them. Afghanistan, no. Who's left then, right? And it's a good opportunity for us to get something from the U.S. We are a nuclear power, so it's a good idea for U.S. to keep. That's the reason they keep us around, really. That's really most of the reason they keep us around. So I'm sure that, Pakistan asked for some benefits, like maybe some sanctions, some debt to be relieved, some security from India, and Iran doesn't trust anybody else. Maybe they trust the fact that, I don't know how much trust they have in Pakistan, because we do have these skirmishes every now and again. But I'm sure they have more trust in us than they do in any other country. And of course, there's been trade and there's chances of more trade with us because we've been the 2 3 countries that they've been trading with, and if anything goes wrong, that's going to be uh, uh, something that sticks for Iran. And again, our nuclear power says a lot because we can get away with a little bit more when it comes to the US than anyone else, any other country, meaning. So that makes a difference. And then, again, that same reason that we share a very long border with Iran, and you know, being constant enemies is not healthy for us or for them, and they understand that. So yeah. So all these reasons and many others is, is probably why the US chose Pakistan, and is one of the many, many reasons that Iran accepted. Because Iran has been ready. They didn't start this. They are ready to end it, but they don't want to be seen as the weaker party or the party that can be easily destroyed. So when the ceasefire thing started, it was actually the US who reached out to Pakistan and said that, okay, we're ready to talk. Let's see what we can do. Talk about it. We're actually ready to talk. Let's talk about it. So they gave out a 15-point plan proposal, the US, and Iran in return gave a 10-point plan. So this is what Iran sent. The 10 points I'll read in English, and this has been confirmed by जो उनकी state media है Iran का, which is called तस्नीम News. इनके X पे इसकी translation Dawn, I'm reading the Dawn translation. उनकी X पे over here, I cannot read Persian, but you can see that it's there. You can go check it out. First point is, the United States should fundamentally commit to guaranteeing non-aggression, continuation of Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz, acceptance of enrichment, lifting of all primary sanctions, lifting of all secondary sanctions. So these are 2 points. Termination of all UN Security Council resolutions, termination of all resolutions of the IAEA Board of Governors, compensation to Iran, withdrawal of US combat forces from the region, cessation of war on all fronts, including against the heroic Islamic resistance in Lebanon. So here they're talking about Hezbollah. कि हिजबुल्लाह के खिलाफ जो जंग हो रही है, जो लेबनान में अब शुरू हो गया, जो what I was mentioning this a little bit earlier, कि वहाँ पे the Israelis IDF is encroaching and their settlers are setting in and लोगों को displace किया जा रहा है, Lebanese को displace किया जा रहा है. This is what they're talking about. So they're not just talking about themselves. They're talking about stop the war in Lebanon and, सारे region के आसपास से जितने भी military है उनको सबको निकालो. So they're actually caring about other people other than themselves as well. And that is actually as things are opening up, as we are realizing it, as we are seeing, nobody understands why Iran. जब ईरान ने जो उनको साइन करवाना था, जो कहना था वो कर दिया, and these are pretty reasonable. And a reasonable government would say, okay, I can't agree to all of this, but here is my counter proposal. And that's what I was hoping. I was literally sure that he was going to say something really stupid and he was going to be rude about it. But I wasn't expecting him to be this idiotic. So he was saying boots on the ground and all these things. And then all of a sudden himself, he was like, okay, ceasefire. I want it. Pakistan, make it happen. And Pakistan said to Iran, okay, how about we come together, come here, we'll do this. And in the meantime, they sent the proposal with the ask for the ceasefire. And then this is what they sent back. And then in response on Wednesday, Trump was livid. Even though week before that, Trump's week or two before that, in the middle of all this somewhere, Trump's director of national intelligence. Okay, so this is in March, that Iran was not building any nuclear weapons. So there is no confusion about the fact that they are not building a nuclear weapon. They are ready to sign whatever you want them to say that they're not building any nuclear weapon, but they are not going to give up so you can destroy their country. So this 10-point proposal, this is what he said this Wednesday on Truth Social. He said, all U.S. ships, aircraft, and military personnel will remain in place in and around Iran until such time as the real agreement is reached and fully complied with. If for any reason it is not, the shooting starts. Shooting in quotations without the G. Bigger and better and stronger than anyone has ever seen before. And he calls us, the Iranians, the Pakistani, the, I don't know, the Gazans, he calls us the terrorists. I don't understand. Here's Pakistan trying to figure out how to talk peace. Iran wants to talk peace. They just, most of the things on there are reasonable. Qatar actually, okay, I understand what this is all about. I want US troops out of Qatar. And I'm sure most of it is because they don't want to be constantly blown up by Iran. But for whatever reason, they backed out. So everybody realizes in like the Arab world and our world, Middle East, South Central Asia, that we don't really want to fight and we don't really want to keep shooting and bombing. But we're the terrorists. The people who want to keep shooting and bombing are not the terrorists. So boots on the ground and keep bombing, and I'm going to bomb you to the Stone Age, and I'm going to, all of that, they're not terrorists. Iran is the terrorist regime. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing how they talk, and it's interesting how their people at least, just believe it. I mean, they're waking up to it now, but it is interesting how people believe it. Like the things that are actually terrorism, even in our countries, don't really make news over there. How many women die in honor killings? And I'm not saying that they should start reporting those things because then they have more ammunition, but I'm just saying how many women die like that? How many children are murdered? And Saudi Arabia is actually, a monarchy, not that kind of monarchy where it's like, oh, okay, well, your people love them and people approve. No, somebody says anything and they're going to disappear or go to jail and nobody's going to know what's happened. Nobody's going to hear about them ever again. Things that are happening in Kashmir, nobody in America even knows what Kashmir is. So, it's interesting. And last point that I want to make is we've never heard of, all we hear is their brutal regime, Iran, and they're terrible and they're tyrant and this and that. And even like the American media, even the people that you consider to be, or at least I consider to be, really good and kind of on the left, meaning like open-minded people, even they talk about the Iranian government. Well, basically, they will never call it a government. They will call it a regime, which means, oh, they are evil and they are like, they are holding the entire nation hostage. And that's the problem. They don't know what's actually happening there. So here are a few things about their government that we should know these things. The reason we should know these things is because we also have a bias, right? When we hear about the Iranian government, we don't think of the government. We just think of this one guy who just does whatever he wants. And if somebody disagrees with him, he gets them killed, right? That's all we think of. And, you know, women have to wear hijab. And if they don't, they kill them in the streets. That's all we know. I mean, we've seen riots in Pakistan too. People have spoken up, even with governments that they have elected themselves. And again, I don't know what's happening inside and how much they like or dislike their government or their supreme leader, but they do have a proper government. As we know, they have a president, they have a prime minister, and then they have local, I don't know what they call them, but governors and, you know, province, state people who control them. And then they have, you know, जैसे हमारे तहसीलदार councillors होते हैं, उस तरह they have those, and they have elections every 4 years for at least the president and the prime minister and governors. बाकियों का मुझे नहीं पता कि कितने, how often they have the elections. So their system works pretty much like any other country. Any foreign country to judge them, especially the US, he's going on his third term. So for him to be like, oh, they're tyrants and, you know, they don't have a functioning government, they do have a functioning government. Now, they have, which most Muslim countries do, we have that kind of a thing too, but we don't have a supreme leader. That's the only difference. Now, they have a legislature that is elected. It's about what, 80? How many people? 80 people, I think. 81, 80, I don't know. They are elected. But they, after they are elected, they, and they, this is a religious, it's called the Majlis, you know, and we can understand that, you know, there's religious people that are elected by the people, and then they pick a supreme leader, and then he's there until he dies. So this is not a person gets up and says, I'm in charge, and that's it. This is a whole system. It's a pretty reasonable system. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't agree with the, this is it until he passes away, but he's chosen by the people, and this is how things work. You can't put everything in front of the people, but you do choose it. And in the US, I mean, they're not a democracy, in my opinion, but that is what the Electoral College is. You pick the people who pick your prime minister, your president, your vice president, your president. So this is how, and this is what Islamic system is too, by the way. I mean, we don't have a supreme leader concept, but, you know, of course they're getting some things wrong for sure. But to call them whatever, you know, tyrant and this and that is absolutely wrong. These people are elected. And the choice to have a person, you know, until they pass away is also a choice that this country and the public has made. Because they believe in imams, you understand? They believe in this system. Another thing I want to make very clear that, yeah, these things might happen. There might be situations where there are riots and people die, and I'm sure a lot of them, some of them, may be the government's fault. But Mossad network and the Israeli intelligence is very, very deeply rooted in Iran. So a lot of the time, either खुद से कोई situation create करके और कोई riot शुरू कर देते हैं या किसी को, they'll kill somebody and then they'll, you know, start something and make a huge thing, and then जो है वो media will pick it up, and that is their intention, to make Iran look bad. And obviously, then they're going to have to shut it down, and the government knows that this is Mossad. And that's happened over and over again. You know, pictures of women smoking and burning the picture, a picture of a supreme leader or whatever. No matter if you are a Muslim, no matter how much hate you have for another Muslim person, especially in an Islamic leader, no matter how dislike you have for him, these are the kind of things Muslim women don't do. You don't have to be wearing hijab. You don't have to be a religious person, but there is a certain respect you have. So these are the kind of things that Mossad does to aggravate the situation. And a non-Muslim will not pick up on it. They'll just be like, yeah, look how much she hates him because smoking in public places is not allowed. How? What a little tiny thing that people can't do there. But you see, we know, right? We know. And we also know that this is not something a respectable woman or even a man, but a respectable woman won't do and not even in private, but in public. Like, and then, okay, so we should support somebody, any educated person doing something like that. Well, we know that women's rights, oh, they're being, oh my God, toppled in Iran. But you know that 60% of women in Iran are highly educated and are professionals. It's really, think about what, do these two things correlate? They don't have time to be burning down pictures with cigarettes. They're busy having a life. They don't have time for this. And if they don't like the situation, they can literally just go to a different country. But that's the thing. That is what these guys do. One picture here, 10 people riot there, and then, जो elements हैं, जो approve नहीं करते government को, just bring them all out. And then what ends up happening is the government hai, they have to shut down the elements. They're not going to kill their own people. They're not going to kill Muslims, but they have to shut down the elements. And they will arrest the elements. They will kill, Mossad agents, the Israelis, the people who have actually committed the crimes. और फिर उसका फैल जाता है कि, oh, today they killed, 15 people. Today they killed 10,000 people. Today they killed this many people. Yeah, if there are Mossad agents and Israelis in the mix, they will kill them. And as Muslims, we should approve of it. And then we just need to think about why Iran. Iran के पीछे क्यों पड़ गए? और अभी नहीं, हमेशा से, especially Israel. Israel ने कहा कि इराक को अटैक करेंगे तो सब कुछ स्टेबल हो जाएगा मिडिल ईस्ट में. What happened? Iraq was destabilized. क्या चल रहा था इराक का सिस्टम? इराक को destabilized. अफगानिस्तान को अटैक करने सब कुछ तालिबान चले जाएंगे तो सब कुछ ठीक हो जाएगा. What? क्या ठीक हुआ? अफगानिस्तान destabilized हुआ लेकिन फिर तालिबान खेला. और अब no noise. Nobody cares about that. They themselves don't care about that. Nobody talks about Afghanistan anymore. But उससे पहले से they've been talking about Iran. And because the US has not been paying attention, they have not cared as much as Netanyahu has, but there was nothing else to care about. I mean, same thing happened with Vietnam, and then they eventually did it, and we don't hear about it enough. But finally, this president gave in for Iran, but none of them were prepared as much as for the damage they were going to take in. They didn't know because of all the sanctions, because of the media, how they don't let people in, or I mean, people can visit, the journalists can go in, but they don't, let you through their media. You cannot, they don't let their media outside, so you don't really know what's happening inside their country. And I think that strategy, I never understood that strategy. I still don't really get it, why, but that strategy didn't work for them. Because of that, they're kind of in control of the situation. And that's what's bothering Trump and Netanyahu so much, that the fact that this country that's been sanctioned and that was considered weak, one of the weakest countries in the world, um, is now controlling basically more than 20% of the economy of the oil of the world, and kind of sort of calling the shots, not all of it, but some of it. So yeah, just keep asking the question, why? Yeah, because they think it has some kind of power. At least I don't think Trump really understands it, but I think Netanyahu thinks that unless Iran's taken out or its power is reduced, Netanyahu cannot do whatever he wants to do in peace. So he's having Trump fight his battles. But it's not working so well for them, both of them. But we need to keep our eye on the ball, which is, I mean, nobody ever explained to us why Iran is considered tyrant regime, why they're terrorists. Living in the US, I grew up hearing that. And I was like, why? Why? And then you do research, you talk to different people, and the people who are living in the US and Iran, they also consider that regime. There is a lot of people in the US, you'll hear Iranian Americans, they'll say, yeah, Iran should be bombed. And it's like, the people of Iran? Yes, the people of Iran. It's like, what? These are the people who ran after the Islamic Revolution started. But I understand. They were on the other side. I totally get it that they wanted to, of course, their families and whatnot, they wanted to leave. They were in trouble. But why would you want your fellow people who are not into politics, who are not into anything, to be bombed? So there's a lot of misinformation about what happened. That's why it's confusing for people who are not involved in this, like white people and Europeans. They just hear that side. Oh yeah, the revolution came, and you meet so many of these people. The revolution came, and then we had to leave, and those people are so cruel, and they do this and they do that, and it's like, that's all you hear. So search for yourself, find out about these people yourself, learn. I appreciate that you want to watch it again, and please share it with other people as well, because this is the kind of news that we need. We need, the news about, okay, well, 10-point proposal, and then, Trump's response. But then what was that proposal that he reacted so badly to? Rather than coming up with his own proposal and then having a discussion. No, what was that proposal? These kinds of things. And then what is this government that everybody hates so much and everybody talks about as, oh my God, horrible people? So we need to, keep our minds open when we are talking about governments and talking about people and, all those things. So thank you for your appreciation, and thank you for being here. Thank you for, watching these long videos. Thank you for being here. Have a good night, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are. And I will see you guys next time. Love.